He had exceptional talent with a sword. There was nothing he couldn't learn and nothing that could escape his blade. He even trained so hard that he had bloodstains on the palms of his hands, but after dropping out of high school, he spent 20 years honing his knife skills and became the best swordsman in the country. In the next scene, we see a guy slicing a fish to plate in a restaurant. People are moving back and forth, calling out table orders amid the usual chaos of a busy kitchen. Then something catches the attention of the people outside the kitchen, and even the chefs are staring at someone. The man is there, intensely focused on cutting the fish. One of the staff members tells the head chef that his phone is ringing. He's wearing headphones, so he didn't hear it. He says, I should have set it to vibrate. Then he notices a notification from a game he had already uninstalled. Why was it showing up? Was the phone glitching? Suddenly, someone informs the chef that a guest has arrived, but the chef responds, "For God's sake, just say I'm not here." However, the guest is already approaching. He's there to demand an answer from the chef, believing he has given him more than enough time to think. "It's not a difficult request for someone who works with blades all day," he says. Then he pauses and adds, "Sorry, maybe I'm being a bit insensitive." He opens a briefcase full of money and says he'll make sure not to disappoint the chef. An advance payment of 300 million. But the chef simply chops something and says, "This kitchen is a clean place. There's no room for filthy people like you." What he chopped was a tuna hanging nearby. The guest gets furious, saying that the chef is practically a sword saint. What's a sword saint doing in a kitchen? Just cutting up fish. When the man grabs a knife, everyone is completely shocked. As the man storms out, he says he won't give up on the chef that easily and will return soon to talk again. Later, the chef steps out to smoke. Another employee comments on the 300 million offer, saying he would have taken it. The chef replies that he's only ever cut fish heads, never been a criminal. The man asks, "So you only have a reputation? You've never slit anyone's throat?" He tells him to just take the money, scare the person, do something with the knife, then use the money to open a shop, buy a house. Everyone deserves to live like a human being, right? But the chef says he wouldn't take it even if it were $1 billion. Then the man notices the chef's phone buzzing with notifications and teases, "Wow, you've got a lot of girlfriends, huh?" The chef replies that it's just some boring game. The man asks, "Oh, that divine protection game?" The chef says yes, but he had already quit it. Someone calls the employee back to clean the kitchen, and the chef begins reflecting on his youth. His family had gone bankrupt, and he started working all the time trying to live like a human being. Maybe he had focused too much on earning money. He wonders why the phone is still getting game notifications. Did he reinstall it after drinking? Anyway, he decides to delete it again, but when he tries to clear the notification, he accidentally taps it and the game Divine Protection opens. He thinks that even though he didn't play the game much, its soundtrack is nostalgic, and the female characters are still as beautiful as ever. Suddenly the phone begins to lag, and then everything starts to glow. In the next scene, we see the employee coming out again, saying they're calling the chef, but he's gone. The man wonders where the chef went and why he left his phone behind like that. Someone asks, "Where's the chef?" And he replies, "I don't know, maybe he went to take a dump." Meanwhile, on the phone screen it says, "Transfer complete, 100%. The following scene explains a bit about the game Divine Protection. It's a typical pay-to-win mobile game. You pay and become strong. It has a boring auto-hunting system and is a super generic game that doesn't need much explanation. Someone says, "So you might be wondering, why do I play this game then?" The person explaining admits it's because he likes the appearance of the little girls in the game. He never spent a single cent on in-game purchases, nor did he complete any of the game cycles. He never even played with a main character or an NPC. In fact, he ended up getting reincarnated as one of the background characters, and his name is Kang Geomar. Then suddenly, while walking down the street, a woman bumps into him. He's the typical League of Legends player thinking, "Oh my god, a woman." He asks if she's okay since they bumped into each other, but she says it's fine, it was her fault. Meanwhile, the protagonist is thinking about how the game is based in Korea. The names, locations, geography, and even the language are pretty much the same as Korean, more or less. There are some differences, but still, everything was heavily inspired by Korea itself, so thanks to that, he adapted very easily. He's still a teenager, at least for this year, and he lives inside the game without knowing whether reality is a game, or maybe just pretending not to know, living a completely normal high school life just like he did in his past life. It's a very typical secondary life. Then, when he says he's home, someone gets very excited and says that the pride of the family has finally returned. That person is his mother, who shows him a letter saying that he's been accepted into a university. He responds, "Please, Mom, can you stop with this for now?" But she insists, saying she's very proud and has already looked at that letter over and over again. Jeonma's parents were way more excited than he was, even though tomorrow would be his entrance ceremony. They ask if he's packed everything for the trip. He says yes. He just needs to finish a few things. He thinks to himself that his peaceful, ordinary life is now completely ruined. In his room, feeling very discouraged, he thinks that the time has come. Everyone's too excited, so he can't just give up on this university. He had already asked to withdraw several times, but it didn't work. He's exhausted. He wonders, Kang Jamar, how did he even get accepted into a school like this, looking so unremarkable? Then it's explained what actually happened. When he first entered this body, his parents told him that the previous year he had manifested his blessing. He was confused, thinking, what do you mean? Apparently, just before he took over Jumar's body, the original Jumar had manifested a blessing, which made him pass the entrance exam to Awakens Academy immediately. The protagonist wonders, is this kid some kind of genius? It's explained that a blessing allows humans to use special abilities, basically the same concept as in the game. But not all humans have divine protection. A lot of it comes down to genetics. Richer and more noble families are more likely to have blessing. That's why an elite academy, Awakens, was founded. It was supposedly created to train heroes, but of course it's only open to the elite. However, a new admission program for people from non-heroic families had recently been introduced, and that's how Jumar was accepted. The reason they need heroes is to fight monsters, but the protagonist says he doesn't want that reality. It's not his reality. He doesn't want to be in a school being trained to become a hero and go to war. He gets bored just thinking about the fact that he has a blessing. Then his status window pops up and he says it still looks ugly as always. The system shows that he has the blessing of no pain, which stays active for 30 seconds and has a 12-hour cooldown. The protagonist wonders if that's really what got him accepted into the academy. 30 seconds. 12-hour cooldown? That's just sad. But he remembers, that's not the blessing he received when he arrived in this body. The true blessing is from the god of the sword. Anything he hits with a blade will be cut. The activation time is infinite. The effect only works with blades 30 centimeters or less in length and 5 centimeters or less in thickness. He wonders if this blessing is too powerful. Maybe someone's messing with him. He says he's never even seen this ability in the game, but the description is also very basic. If it hits, it cuts. How does that even work? There must be a condition for activation. Then he looks at the blade specs and realizes it's the perfect size for a sashimi knife, the same kind he used his entire past life. The protagonist still has no idea what the game wants from him. Life never goes the way he wants. He finally finishes packing, but oops, he forgot his equipment. Then he starts thinking about the gear he had when he first started the game. Even E-rank equipment costs millions. S-rank gear? Maybe only 2 people in the world have it. He doesn't want anything flashy, so he doesn't waste money. But he also knows if he shows up at school with no equipment at all, he'll stand out. Eventually, he gives in and decides to prepare some equipment. He remembers that in his past life, a teacher insisted that Japanese knives are worth it, so why not give it a try? After all, someone who's truly skilled never blames their tools. The next day, he's all dressed up and ready, carrying his bags. Someone wonders what exactly he's bringing. We see that he's packed with a bunch of sashimi knives. He's standing in a line for the equipment inspection that happens on the first day. The muscular instructor doing the inspection thinks to himself, there's always one prankster every year. I've got to show them who's boss. He slams the table and asks, you think this academy is a joke? You're going to enter this academy with kitchen knives as your equipment? But the protagonist calmly replies, this is my equipment. The instructor stares at him for a moment, then gets angry and shouts, student. But Jumar simply responds, sir instructor, I'm a special admissions student from an ordinary family. My family is not in a position to provide me with proper equipment, Jumar says. Are you going to keep doing this disservice? An instructor notices that his tag is a different color, meaning he's a special admission student, and thinks, real equipment is extremely expensive. Now that I think about it, people like him will have a huge disadvantage in their education, won't they? Then, the protagonist throws a sharp comment at him, saying that blaming someone for their equipment is incredibly immature. He holds tightly to a principle ingrained in his mind. An expert never blames their tools. He reached the pinnacle of swordsmanship without ever having proper gear. That's the life philosophy he carries with him. Suddenly, the instructor feels his presence and says that the protagonist is definitely a goch, perhaps a reference to someone talented or special. Then another instructor announces that the student Jamar, admitted through special admission, is allowed to use his own equipment. Naturally, the protagonist thanks them before leaving. Of course, the snobby rich students start talking trash about him because of his special admission, but the instructor immediately tells everyone to shut up. Now, he's standing by the protagonist's side. He says that it all depends on their actions, not where they came from. Understood? And everyone replies, yes. The protagonist thinks, after this, I'm definitely going to have PTSD. Later, he says he needs a break. He didn't expect entering the academy to be this awkward and uncomfortable, but at least his equipment evaluation is done. Now he just has to take the test to determine what class he'll be placed in. He thinks, one way or another, I've made it far. This is an extremely privileged academy, Awakens Academy. He admits that it's totally different from just looking at it through a phone screen. The campus is ridiculously huge, like a small city could fit inside it. The protagonist has to admit this place is actually pretty cool. He reflects that he's now in a school full of high-class people. In his past life, he had to drop out of school because of money. He wonders if he ever imagined being in a place like this. Suddenly, a voice on the speaker announces that the exam will begin and all new students must gather by 3 p.m. The protagonist thinks, so soon? I already passed the entrance ceremony, but this test is way more important. He says he needs to test out his new equipment. Then he pauses, realizing, wait, I haven't touched a knife since I got here, have I? He remembers his master who always told him, never let go of your sword, sleep with it if you must. He lived 22 years by the sword, surely 1 year of rest hasn't dulled his skills, right? He inspects the knife to see if it's sharp and says not bad at all, to be honest. He goes to test it by slicing a leaf, but as he draws the blade, it starts to energize. The system announces that the conditions to activate the blessing of the sword god have been met. However, it warns that the protagonist's body is still too weak, and so is the equipment. Then a suppression takes place to sync the power with his current body and weapon. Jamar thinks, wait, is the ability activating already? He activates the skill at level 1, and the system says, may the gods bless you. Then he suddenly feels immense pain as the energy flows through the knife in his body. He thinks he might die from the pain, but he survives and finds himself in a completely different space. He wonders, what the hell just happened? When he drops the knife on the ground, it seems like the universe, the very fabric of reality, begins to rebuild itself. He realizes, wait, I'm back. That whole thing happened the moment he let go of the knife. What the hell is going on? He feels an intense headache. He thinks the skill activated, but why did the blessing make the whole world fall apart? And is this headache a side effect? Apparently, when he previously used the no-pain blessing, he only ended up with some muscle soreness afterward. He wonders if it's going to hurt this much every time. How am I ever going to use my knife? Again, the loudspeaker calls for all new students to gather immediately. He thinks about whether he can even pick up the knife again. He can't just leave a Sashimi knife lying around on the ground, right? Maybe it only hurt because it was the first time. Maybe it'll be fine now. But the moment he picks the knife up again, intense pain strikes. In the next scene, we're in the training area. Lots of students are already gathered, waiting. Several nobles are chatting, and we see someone very important among them. The Sword Emperor Segveri Wan Nibelung, a 7-star hero. They say he's a direct descendant of Aaron Nibelung, and beyond that, he's the apprentice of the legendary hero, currently the most powerful human alive. The nobles get a bit intimidated by his presence and start looking for seats. Then a woman appears alongside the Sword Emperor. She's also a 7-star hero known as the Poison of Medea. She asks the Emperor how his half a century of his life later. Isekied just says, Medea, and asks, you're dressed like that at an academy? Are you seriously using turning 70 as an excuse to say you're going crazy? She replies, every woman deserves to feel beautiful, don't you think? And says she could make him look 10 years younger with her blessing if he wanted. He responds that even at 70, she still looks like a child and that people should be judged by their character, not their age. Apparently that's her mindset too. She says that Seagay is just as silly as ever. just like in the last half-century. He calls her an old fox, but she remarks that at least today's events and people are a lot more interesting than back in their day. She then asks if Isekie's granddaughter is beautiful, but he doesn't say a word. Then, the students are informed that the match is about to begin. Everyone starts organizing themselves, and our protagonist is noticeably isolated. He thinks he might be the only one here alone. On top of that, he's a special admission student. He remembers how people tend to bully those in his position. Suddenly, someone walks by and the crowd parts naturally as she passes. The boys are all stunned by her beauty. The protagonist immediately recognizes her. She also studies here. She's Abel von Lung, granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. She's the main heroine of the game Divine Protection. The reason he spent so much money on that game. In the next scene, we're given some background information on something called subspace, created by the legendary hero Belle. It's an alternate space of reality. Pain and experience are real, but they don't affect the real world. Even murder can occur there without impacting reality. The Sword Emperor asks if the training will take place in subspace, and Maria confirms it. She explains that the school is doing things differently this year. It will be a battle royale with groups of 10. The last one standing win. There are also no equipment restrictions. Siags asks, if there are no restrictions, doesn't that mean elite students can bring whatever they want inside? Medea tells him not to even mention it. It seems that these days the academy is focusing only on money. She admits she's had a major headache because of this new system. Siag asks if she's talking about special admissions. Meanwhile, our protagonist is in awe, thinking she's even more incredible in person. Before she was just a 2D character. Now she's right in front of him. He sees other students trying to talk to her and thinks, if I were even a bit more confident, I'd be there too. Abel von Nibelung, the main character of Divine Protection. In other words, the heroine you control in the game. He reflects on how close the character was to the player and how pretty people always seem to end up in relationships. Besides, he's just a special admission student. He tells himself he won't get involved with that kind of school life. The 3 words he's set for his new life are safe, ordinary, and protected. With that approach, he'll study peacefully, get a stable job, and live a secure, peaceful life. He thinks, becoming a hero? Not a chance. I touched a knife and nearly died from the pain. Heroes protect the world. He just wants to live comfortably. Suddenly, the magic crystal begins announcing the test rules. This time it's a battle royale. Among the 10-person teams, the top-ranking students will be classified as Class 1, Star, Class 2 and 3, Dragon, Class 4 to 7, Wolf, Class 8 to 10, Ordinary. Based on these results, students will be assigned to different classes, points will be calculated automatically, and there's no time limit. The protagonist thinks the format is a lot like the game. His goal is to complete it quickly and avoid drawing attention. Then the spatial deployment device activates. The exam begins now. Suddenly, dark shadows cover the arena. The automated system says, "May the blessing of the hero be with you." The protagonist thinks he'll avoid drawing his weapon as much as possible. In the next scene, everyone is seen exiting the subspace, battered and exhausted. The magic crystal announces everyone's rankings. The Sword Emperor and Medea are watching. She thinks in this place alone we have Sieg's granddaughter and descendants of Shang Sang and Gung. These results were practically predetermined. Then she notices the time. 7 minutes. Unbelievable. She broke a record with a C-rank weapon. The weapon used was high risk. It required the user to have perfect control of their blessing. Medea comments that these new young people are acting more mature than they look. Even if they're not at the level of heroes from her era, this year's selection will definitely go down in Academy history. The Sword Emperor replies, "That's expected from my granddaughter, a true descendant of the Nibelung family." He says it looks like it's wrapping up and starts to leave. Medea says there's really not much left to see, but the Emperor asks, "Wait, there are still plenty of people left. Are you really leaving?" She says, "Uh-huh. See you in the next life, old man." Suddenly, both the Emperor and Medea feel something intense. In fact, everyone feels it. Medea asks if he felt that, and he replies, "This is just ridiculous." He says it's a feeling that's incredibly rare. He's only felt it once before, near the president. Then suddenly, a loud noise erupts, and the sky is torn open. The subspace itself is cut apart. Someone has literally sliced through the subspace. 2 people fall from the rift in the sky, and people start whispering. Wait, did they just fall from outside the subspace? Suddenly, the rift begins to shine brightly and something shoots down from it at high speed. It's a sashimi knife. Medea immediately calls the medical team to rescue the people lying on the ground. We then see our protagonist collapse next to his knife. Now we see the scene from his perspective. He realizes the results were predetermined. There were elites in the match, but due to pure bad luck, he ended up in a life and death battle. We see other students getting massacred. He explains he ended up in the group with the evil twins, the two brothers of the Iron family, Majum and Jumar. They're shown brutally beating the other students without mercy. They're naturally talented, but also extremely violent. The protagonist notes that 30 minutes have passed and they're still beating people. Strangely, he hasn't been targeted. He wonders, am I so weak they didn't even notice me? Then, one of the brothers throws what looks like a lifeless body to the ground. He starts counting 1, 2, and then asks his brother how many he knocked out. In that moment, he stomps on another student's head, smashing it into the ground. His brother complains that he got 4 and he only got 2, but the first replies, "No, I left 1 for you." He points to a terrified girl trembling in the corner. The protagonist becomes alert. He had already been watching her for a while. She's completely panicked. She won't even be able to defend herself. The taller brother walks toward her slowly and says he likes her a lot. He loves people who cry and scream a lot. The other brother responds that, even though they're twins, the taller one is a total pervert to him. He then asks, should I start by splitting her in half? That's when the protagonist yells at them, calling them bastards and sons of, and says, even if it's just subspace, don't go this far. Are you guys psychopaths? Then he realizes, damn, I said that out loud without thinking. The two brothers suddenly turn toward him. They didn't even realize he was there. They mock him, saying he's just another disgusting special admission student and that makes them happy. The taller brother says he'll slice off his head real quick and make him pay for the insults. The protagonist, Jumar, starts panicking. What do I do now? Do I use my blessing? He realizes it won't work. His blessing only lasts 30 seconds, and those two have been pummeling others for 30 minutes. Then he remembers his weapon, the sashimi knife. But he hesitates. Every time he activates his blessing, he feels immense pain. All he wanted was an ordinary and safe life. Half a day had passed, and he had already failed at that. The brothers wonder what he's doing. Slowly he pulls the sashimi knife from his bag. They burst out laughing, mocking him for pulling out a kitchen knife. The taller one calls him funny, but says he's going to kill him anyway, starting with smashing his head in. The protagonist thinks, this is a life or death situation. I only have 30 seconds. I need to come up with something now. He activates the pain suppression blessing, then activates the blessing of the sword god. The pain suppression nullifies the sword god's side effects. The taller brother asks mockingly, what are you going to do with a kitchen knife? Jumar thinks, if I don't cut, I die. But will this giant fat guy really get cut by a sashimi knife? He's not a fish. He's a human. I've never cut a human before. Then he wonders, why do gangsters in movies always use sashimi knives? Do they really cut people like fish? He remembers what his master once told him. Of course not. Not even if God himself wielded it could he do that. But he also remembers another phrase. If you cut, it turns into pieces. As the fat guy lunges at him, Jamar doesn't hesitate. He slashes with the divine slash and cleanly severs one of the brother's hands. The hand, along with the glove, falls heavily to the ground. Jamar thinks, finally I can get payback on these bastards. We then flash back to a scene from his past life, where he asks his master why gangsters eat sashimi. The master throws a knife at him and says, I told you, just call me master. And why the hell do you care about that anyway? His master was an ex-gangster who had lost one of his hands during a gang operation. He wanted to make people happy with knives, not sad. So, he opened a sushi restaurant. However, he had exceptional skills with knives. The protagonist then asks, but why in these kinds of movies is everyone so obsessed with this type of knife? Does this really happen in real life? The master replies, if you stab someone with a wide kitchen knife, their skin will contract quickly, making it look like the knife comes out easily. But sashimi knives are thin, allowing you to stab and pull them out repeatedly. The protagonist asks, what do you mean stab? Don't you mean cut? If it can cut fish, why not people? The master responds, "The fish is already dead, idiot. If it were alive, you wouldn't even be able to cut bread." Then the protagonist makes a comment about a cartoon chef and the master grabs him, shouting, "What damn cartoon?" and slaps him on the head. "You think a knife works like that, you little brat?" He starts smacking the boy's back. Back in the present, we see the enemy's arm has been cut off like butter. He starts screaming and flailing, shouting that his arm has been chopped off and that it hurts. He's terrified of the protagonist now and starts begging him to stay away, fleeing in panic. Meanwhile, the other brother is just frozen in shock by what he's witnessed. The taller brother is crying, calling for help, and just as he screams for his brother again, his head is split clean in half. The surviving brother sees half of his twin's face fall at his feet. He finally reacts by screaming. The protagonist stands there, possessed by rage. The remaining brother thinks, "It's okay, my brother isn't really dead. This is just a subspace." But deep down he wonders, who is this guy? He just split a head in two with a knife. He realizes he must be extremely cautious of that sashimi knife. Thinking his brother lost only because he was careless, the remaining twin grabs the severed arm and steals his glove, equipping both of them now. He activates the Blessing of Resolve, which boosts his defense, increases his jump height by 200%, and enhances his punching power. Now he has 3 buffs active at once. He declares, "It doesn't matter where you got that knife. Not even an S-rank weapon can pierce my defense now." But our protagonist is counting down. He's at 21 seconds. The big guy sees an opening and charges at him, mocking him for mumbling instead of fighting. "You're gonna die now, kid. I'm gonna crush your skull." But the protagonist keeps counting. 7, 6. Suddenly the brute realizes he's on the ground with countless knives stuck in his body. At 3, the man dies. Right then, the system announces that the pain suppression blessing has ended, and the protagonist starts screaming in agony while clutching the sashimi knife. In the next scene, he slowly opens his eyes and asks if he's in a hospital. As he tries to get up, he's overwhelmed by pain. Someone quickly passes by the door checking if he's awake and then runs off to report it. The protagonist thinks he just saw a face he never expected to see. The person who, 50 years ago, annihilated the Demon King's army. Standing in front of him are the 2 7-star heroes, the strongest human, Siegfried, and the Academy director, Medea. He wonders why these legendary figures are here. Then Sieg asks him for his name. He replies, Jamar, and cuts straight to the point, asking what he did inside that space. Jamar remembers the sensation he felt. It wasn't even him in that moment. He wasn't himself in that body. He is already holding his sword, and the protagonist realizes it's very bad to be the target of that man. He says that even though it was just a subspace, he thought the twins went way too far and that he knows he himself went too far too. He says he's ready to accept any punishment. Sieg stares at him, but Medea interjects, "Come on, old man, are you really trying to intimidate the poor kid?" She sits beside the bed and tells Jumar that it was Sieg who cleared his blocked meridians while he was unconscious. Apparently, she adds, the older people get, the more stubborn they become. She leans in, saying playfully, "Come on, little guy, at least look at me. I really like shy boys." Geomma, Sieg, and even another man named Freud all become embarrassed by her behavior. Geomma wonders, why did the swordmaster do that for me? Then he realizes it's no surprise his body feels much lighter than before. Medea tells him they reviewed the footage from the room he was in and she says she was moved. He had protected a disadvantaged student like a prince from her dreams. "Maybe you're my little hero," she teases. The emperor speaks up, "Medea." She rolls her eyes, fine, old man." The emperor tells her to maintain her dignity, and she says she's only telling Jamar all this so he won't worry, because he won't be punished for what he did. They were only accepted because of a favor from their very influential family. Medea says they will be expelled from the school soon. Geomar thinks, that's a relief. At least I won't have to share my school life with people like that. But the emperor says that actually they are there for another reason. Geomar has become the top student in the exam, and they congratulate him for it. He thinks, wait, what? He had only wanted a peaceful and safe life. In the next scene, a little later at the academy, we see Medea saying that she has been the director of the academy for 20 years, but this is the first time something like this has ever happened. We return to the earlier moment and Jumar says that he doesn't want to be first place. Both are shocked by this. Medea pleads, Jumar, please reconsider. Do you understand what it means to be the star of the class? Maybe he didn't hear properly, but his result was determined by the exam itself. Still, he says he doesn't want it. The emperor just watches silently until Medea calls his name and we return to the present. She asks, are you upset because Jamar took your granddaughter's spot? He replies, of course not. That would be incredibly immature. There's nothing more immature than ranking someone based solely on their connections. The academy chose the best student, so they'll just have to accept that. He reflects on how Geomar had no exceptional innate abilities, no strong physical talents, and very little experience. Still, for a boy his age, he remembers that massive strike. Those movements he saw of Geomar's technique at that moment embodied the very concept of skill that was the pinnacle of swordsmanship. However, he also noticed something off in the boy's meridians. His body wasn't properly trained for the skills he displayed. It was as if something had been sealed inside him, something that shouldn't have been there. He thinks to himself that even at this age, the Sword Emperor is still competitive, especially when the student is the same age as his granddaughter. Medea says, he is very attractive, isn't he? Not just the way he killed his opponents to save a defenseless girl. If I were 10 years younger, or maybe even now, I might give him a chance. She changes the subject and asks, what are you thinking about, old man? The emperor asks, what do students these days call someone like you, huh? Medea replies, why don't you use that shiny bald head of yours and try to guess? What do you think people call ladies like me? He just replies, bitch. She gets really pissed, slams her teacup on the table. The next scene shows the protagonist heading to his class, the wolf class, and he remembers why he's here. Medea had told him he would be placed in the wolf class, but Jumar had said, Director, I want to be in the tiger class. Is that possible? She replied, of course not. The top student in the tiger class? If the best student were placed there, the credibility of my school would be ruined. Becoming a tiger is not permitted for you. She added that in return she would keep his secret. She thought that if he were placed in the tiger class, the academy's executives would pressure her even more. Jumar, on the other hand, thought his idea was to complete his studies safely in a lower-level class instead of constantly fighting in a high-level one. The wolf class was still within his expectations. However, when he entered the class, everyone was staring at him, but only because he had slammed the door. Once they saw he was in through special admission, everyone just ignored him. He thought, they ignored me. If you're going to ignore me, at least stop staring, right? If they really ignored him, that must mean the director kept his secret. It seemed like he might finally be able to live a peaceful life after all, a rare bit of good news. Then, we see the girl he saved earlier approaching to thank him. She says, back in the exam, do you remember? And he replies, yes, of course. He thinks to himself, why is she using such formal language for someone her age? He tells her there's no need to thank him because anyone would have done the same, but she insists she had to thank him for what he did. Jamar thinks, I only did it to save myself, not her. Now he feels a bit hypocritical. He takes the opportunity to introduce himself. I'm Kang Jamar, she replies, that her name is Chloe, and he says it's nice to meet her and that it's good to have at least one familiar face in the same class. She says she feels happy about that too. He thinks, Chloe, I don't remember this character from the game, but also reflects that the main characters in the game are few, so it'll be hard to recognize everyone. Maybe she's an extra character, just like me. Geomar then tells Chloe to keep what happened during the exam a secret. She says, yes, of course, and was about to ask him for something when the professor yells for everyone to take their seats. Geomar says, let's talk later, okay? The professor throws a book onto his tablet and says that everyone there should be proud. They were all chosen to inherit the legacy of their brave ancestor, Valor Awakens, and should embrace that pride. His name is Bin, and he's the instructor of the wolf class. He says that since it's the first day, they'll start with some basic exercises. Everyone must gear up and report to the training area in 30 minutes. One of the students asks what they'll be doing, and Bin replies that it's very simple: no push-ups, no sit-ups, no squats, just run 10 laps around the training field. If there are no more questions, they can begin. Jumar thinks, by the end of this training, do we all go bald or something? He approaches the professor, who asks, what do you want? But the professor calls him by name, and Jumar thinks, wait, he knows my name? He says he wants to skip the training because he's not feeling well. but the professor says that since he's an excellent student, this routine won't even make him sweat. In fact, today he'll be doing training meant for the star class. He also adds that the director said Jumar should always receive a higher level training load than the rest of his class. Jamar thinks, that damn old hag. Then he tries to change tactics and says, actually, I need to use the bathroom. I was kind of holding it, you know? The professor replies, of course, of course. As expected of a good student like you, I'll wait for you there, all right? Next, we see Jumar running, but he's behind everyone else. He says he can't take it anymore, he can't feel his legs. He's practically dying, repeating to himself, 1, 2, 1, 2. Then Chloe shows up beside him and asks, are you okay? You don't look well. He replies, no, I'm fine. She then asks, Jumar, how many laps have you done so far? He says, I think 5. When he asks how many she's done, she says 7, and he's shocked. But Chloe encourages him, saying he'll make it in the end. Then she runs ahead, and Jumar thinks, that damn exam is what ruined me. In the next scene, back in his room, we see several empty water bottles on the floor. Jumar finishes drinking another and thinks, this sucks. I'm exhausted. It's only been a week at the academy, and I've already faced so many problems. He remembers his first time in the cafeteria. He was already in line asking for food because he was starving, but then thought, wait, why is there a ticket machine here? Isn't food free? He told the lunch lady to start preparing his meal because he'd quickly go get a ticket. But when he saw the price, the scene cuts to a large menu on the wall. He read, spicy pork rice, 50,000, and thought, my God, why is it so expensive? So far, he had only been drinking water and hadn't eaten anything. Then he throws the bottle. He hits the wall, furious and starving at this point. He thinks about how his parents offered him money and he should have accepted it. He's been surviving on the cheapest water on campus so far. He also missed the supplementary dinners. He wraps himself in his blanket and thinks he needs to reflect on something to forget the hunger. Then he thinks about his blessing, and when he does, the system appears. The system tells him that his physical level has increased to 12, and as his physique improves, the restrictions of his sword are being relaxed. Now, the sword he uses can be 2 centimeters longer. He thinks that's not a big deal, but one thing was worth it. He looks at himself in the mirror and sees he's in much better shape. He says it seems all that training wasn't a waste of time. He thinks maybe this is happening because the sword master unlocked his meridian points. At this point, evolution is essential for him. Besides, his blessing is evolving, which means he won't be stuck with a sashimi knife forever. If he keeps improving, he'll be able to wield a real sword eventually. He looks at his little knives and thinks about how hesitant he was to hold them during the entrance ceremony. Now he can wield a sword even if it hurts a lot. Is this the result of the blessing? Then Jumar thinks, why am I suddenly proud of myself, huh? Suddenly, he hears a sound at the door. When he checks, it's Chloe. She's nervous and shy, asking if she's interrupting his rest. He wonders what Chloe is doing there. He tells her, no, she's not interrupting anything. He was just lying down a bit, and he asks how she's doing. She says she hadn't seen him in the cafeteria for a week and asks if he's feeling okay. He says he just doesn't eat meals prepared by others. That's all, though in truth he loves them, and he's extremely hungry. She says she understands, and he replies, don't worry about me. Okay, Chloe? Then, all shy, she says she'd like to invite him if it's not a bother to share a food supply together. He responds, so, let's go then. That's what you're suggesting, right? I'll go with you. He adds, I'm decently good at cooking, you know? She runs after him as he walks off, happy that he's finally going to eat. He asks where her dorm is. In the next scene, it's nighttime and we see that Chloe just finished eating what he cooked. She says it was delicious, and he says he's honored to hear that. She comments on how quickly he prepared such a tasty meal and says she had never cooked fish or tasted that kind of flavor before. He says he'll go check the fridge but mentions that she really seems to like fish. She says yes because she was born and raised on the coast. He says that's excellent, because preparing fish is his specialty. The protagonist thinks that he can finally do something he's good at, without his hands hurting. He says he's going to reminisce a little and cut some sashimi, but the big problem is his blessing. If he picks up a kitchen knife, it'll activate and it hurts. He asks her if she has a larger knife, saying that all the swords he uses in combat look like this one. Then she catches his attention and shows him a huge katana, saying, will this work? He replies that it's okay, he'll just use the kitchen knife. He thinks it's easier to use the pain blessing and get this done in 30 seconds. He remembers that in his past life he was called the best swordsman in the country, so he figures he can handle it. He activates the sword god's blessing. In the next scene, all the food is already eaten. He says it only took 21 seconds. He scaled the fish, removed its bones and guts, and filleted the meat. He says it was a work of art. I guess I still got it. She asks how he got so good at cooking. He tells her he used to work in a restaurant. She asks, what does part-time job mean? He responds, oh, you don't know what that is? Sorry. The protagonist thinks that maybe it's not a difference between worlds, just a social one. He says that in any case, her enjoying the food he made makes him feel very flattered. She says that since he cooked, she'll wash the dishes, and he agrees. All right, sounds good. Then he looks up at the moon and starts singing, thinking that now that his belly is full, he just can't help it. Suddenly, we hear a dish breaking. Chloe is apologizing, having broken something. The protagonist thinks, you're rich. Probably never had to wash dishes before, huh? At your age, I'd already done it so many times. Suddenly, a book falls off one of Chloe's shelves. It looks like a diary with drawings and writing. He wonders, is this her diary? He says her handwriting is really cute, and there are stickers here and there. He thinks he should put it back where it was. But then he stops to look at one page and thinks she's really kind and sweet. He decides to sneak another peek. Why not? Then he gets to a page that talks about him. It says, I love you, 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 and about 80 more times. Seeing that, he thinks, oh God, now I'm screwed. Then we hear another plate breaking because Chloe has turned around and asks if he's reading her diary. In the next scene, it's explained that heroes are respected for slaying demons, and that reputation grows even more when they gain global recognition. However, in the name of this power, some factions abuse the weak simply because they have authority. To punish people like that, there had to be a family that specialized in this task, a family that preferred to work from the shadows. This family is known as the Silesia Auditorium, a clan that handles these kinds of shadow operatives. Those born into the Silesia Auditorium family have their mental state crushed to the last drop from a young age. Emotions are not allowed, they're strictly suppressed. Everyone undergoes extremely harsh training. We see a scene of Chloe observing this brutal training, and in the next she's holding a katana. All these people are shaped into assassination machines. Even young girls are shown igniting blood on their palms. In one scene, we see her grandfather speaking to her, Chloe of the Silesia Auditorium, you must never underestimate your assassin skills. She heard these words so many times that she eventually came to accept them as her reality. The training completely warped her nature, casting a heavy shadow over her heart. Her identity eroded until only traces of emotion remained, and it was at this stage that Chloe entered the academy, Wakim Academy, where students were placed in classes based on their aptitude. Although her talent was incredible, the Silesia family, who thrived in the shadows, had made an agreement with the academy that their members would be assigned to the common class to remain undetected. This was the deal between the family and the academy. But in truth, even before that, during the first 3 years of childhood, the family stripped away the freedom of every individual born there. Chloe accepted her fate as an assassin and never protested. In the end, nothing was going to change that. Or so she thought. Until she met a boy. She remembers the scene where Jamar shouted at those jerks, calling them psychopaths, and rushed to save her in the subspace. It wasn't supposed to feel like dying, it was just a simulated experience, but Chloe did feel it. Even though her fate had long been predetermined to kill, she had already abandoned meaningless battles. She was trained to eliminate only those who deserved it. In the end, nothing would change that, or so she believed. But of course, something could happen to surprise her, a ray of sunlight that could pierce through the stormy clouds of her life, a feeling that burned from the inside out, a sword wielded willingly, different from hers, a sword used for self-defense, a sword used for one's own honor. In that moment, she remembered hiding a book she once loved under her pillow, a story about a princess and the prince who saved her. She realized she had found her prince. That narrative unfolded before her very eyes. Her chest tightened. Her heart began to beat fast, and before she knew it, those feelings surged forth. She felt that this was love. In the next scene, we return to the present. The protagonist is facing her as she gives him a dark, intense look. He stands there awkwardly, in silence, thinking that he's in serious trouble now. This is the first time he's faced something like this. Back in his teenage years, no one ever liked him. He should have realized it. Obviously, she was feeding him. So he tries to change the subject and says, Chloe, the night is beautiful, isn't it? Have you seen the moon? You've made me really happy by giving me food and all that, but I think it's time for me to go now, okay? I'll see you tomorrow. She asks if he saw it. He looks at the diary and says, this book? Oh, must be the one you used to study, right? But she says, the diary, and the protagonist thinks, how the hell did she see that? Does she have eyes in the back of her head? Then she drops her polite tone entirely, and he realizes she's turned into a completely different person. He stammers, I didn't see anything. I didn't see it, I swear. Okay, I saw it. She begins to unsheath her katana. The protagonist thinks, wait, what? Just like that? He realizes jumping out the window isn't an option. He's on the 4th floor. He'd be crushed when he hit the ground. The only way out is through the door, and now he has a serious problem. He's trapped. She starts slowly dragging her katana toward him, and the protagonist thinks she's actually coming to kill him. He considers that maybe she's not well. He knows a bit about this kind of thing. One of her pupils isn't moving, and her eyes look dull and lifeless. She's definitely a yandere. She was all cheerful just a moment ago, and now there's no way. She's absolutely one of those anime yanderes with a dual personality. He thinks that managing someone like that is already extremely difficult, but if the person also has a split personality disorder, then it's game over. And then Jumar realizes the thing that triggered all of this was the diary. If that's the case, she'll pursue him until he dies to ensure his future safety. He needs to take the initiative today. He thinks her aura is much worse than those big guys he fought before, and Geomma realizes that this academy is getting tougher. He thinks he needs to get out of this situation. He's only used 21 seconds of the blessing of pain, which means he still has 9 seconds left. The sashimi knife is still there, but he won't be able to grab it because she's too close to Chloe. But Chloe is already preparing, and the protagonist grabs the first thing he sees, a utility knife. As she charges toward him with the katana, he grabs the utility knife and says he needs to end this now. He thinks the blade is too small, and the system informs him that this type of exercise increases mental resilience. His words and actions have gained temporary intimidation, and the blessing of the sword god has been activated. May the gods be with you, Jamar. The two face off, one with a katana, the other with a utility knife. He says Chloe has long hair and maybe she'll need to cut it a bit. We only see the cuts being made in the air. In the next scene, we see Chloe in her bed, sitting up and asking where Jamar is. She wonders where he went. She thinks back to her last memory of him. She was looking at him while he was observing the moon. She asks, "Where's my katana?" But then she sees it there and sighs. Phew. She recalls that she practically loses consciousness every time she grabs a katana. In her memories, her grandfather tells her not to worry when this happens. She shouldn't deny her talent as an assassin. She always forgets about a murder. Then she puts her face into her pillow and says, "Chloe, I'm so stupid. Why did I have to faint at that moment?" She feels all warm and shy, thinking about Jumar. She wonders if she said something wrong before she lost her memory. Then she notices that her utility knife is on the floor and asks, "Huh? Why is this here?" That's when she realizes her hair is short. He used the utility knife to cut her hair, and he even put all the cut hair in the trash. She thinks, Jamar is really so kind. She decides to write it in her diary before she forgets and writes again that she loves Jamar very much. In the next scene, we see him outside vomiting. He thinks that somehow he managed to escape that situation. He only used 5 seconds of his blessing, and he feels like he might vomit again. With that, all the dinner he ate is coming up. After vomiting a lot, he sits down on a bench to rest. He says he's vomited everything out and is hungry again. He starts thinking about who exactly Chloe is. Her swordsmanship was perfect. She came at him with the intention to strike his heart in one blow. This is a technique only assassins can master. If he had been caught off guard, he would be dead right now. When he thought his life was in danger, he instinctively aimed for her neck. Luckily, the utility knife was too short, so she only ended up cutting her hair. Jamar thinks that he cleaned up the mess, so there shouldn't be any issues later. Right? He thinks that maintaining peace in this place isn't so easy. Apparently, being ordinary is much more difficult. He reflects that for the first time when he came into this cursed game, he had no ambition. Just using a sashimi knife, He reached the pinnacle of fencing. It's hard to imagine, even in the wildest imagination, but that's what they say. Everyone knows how to do something. Besides having a miraculous blessing, the divine protection is the name of the game. So the protagonist also has a blessing beyond the blessing of valor. Awakens, the legendary hero. If Jumar remembers correctly, it was one of the legendary blessings in the game. But the content of the blessing is very simple: save the world from the Demon King's dangers. But the protagonist has a legendary sword called Wound. However, a sword is known to choose its master. Meanwhile, Jamar can use a sashimi knife. He thinks he needs to control himself. Nothing here is real. They're just characters. Nothing is real. He even forgot the goal he had before. But then he stops to think, is there really a person so ordinary in this world? Jumar wonders if he's already given up on knowing who the main character is and who isn't, but at least now he knows how to handle himself in this game. It's been a week since he started studying at the academy, and based on the game's story, the protagonist should be receiving his blessing now. He's late for the registration, and it seems like the story is progressing at this point. Geomma knows the general story but doesn't know how it ends. Of course, knowing this kind of thing is just an addition. No matter what happens, he'll follow the main storyline. He'll lose any advantage or shortcuts he might have. And as Geomma remembers, the game starts to get darker in the second semester of the third year. Demonic tribes and the like, all of them chasing after the protagonist. The Academy has to take action against the demons, which escalates quickly, and in the end, a war breaks out between humans and demons. As a result, the game turned into a cliché. Jamar remembers thinking in his past life what a sudden twist the story had. One moment he was living a peaceful school life just as he wanted in the game, but suddenly, everything started deteriorating. After that, he deleted the game, but just thinking that a war will happen in this world, he wonders if he will die in that war. No, he doesn't want that to happen. He still has 3 years to prepare. Right now, he needs a more realistic goal. He needs to get stronger to survive. Geomar thinks that most stories have a happy ending, don't they? So, he figures it won't go too badly for him. He just needs strength to protect himself, to survive the war. However, he plans to train as discreetly as possible. If he stands out too much, he might end up being forced to fight in the front lines of the war, and he needs to avoid that at all costs. Moreover, he has to restrict his use of the blessing of the sword god because it makes him too powerful, but the physical strain it causes isn't worth it. He starts analyzing the system screen, which shows his abilities, and wonders, why is there so much new content that wasn't in the game here? Body, mind, equipment are shown in the game, but what is this assimilation, and what are these 3 question marks he's seeing? He taps the system screen, and it says that the conditions have not yet been met for Jamar to access this. He thinks that's not important right now though, because another question pops up about this so-called gift he received. Besides that, he needs physical training and a new weapon. Additionally, since he can only use his blessing of pain for 30 seconds, he needs to train with a sword that doesn't meet the sword god's blessing requirements. Fortunately, there will be a monster extermination practice next month, and the reward for that is a Murasami, a rank B weapon. If he can use it well, it will be enough for his graduation. He hopes that sword won't work with his blessing. As he reflects, he thinks there's much more he has to do than he initially thought. Just then, someone catches his attention. It's the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor, who says that the spot he's sitting in is hers. She seems to be sweating from a walk. She stares at the protagonist and he moves a little to the side. She asks if he could move a bit more. He moves and thinks, Abel, I shouldn't have looked at her like that. Then Abel says he doesn't need to leave, just move a bit. Jumar thinks, how is this place hers? It's just a public bench. But the truth is, he needs to cut all ties with the heroine of the game. We see her trying to cool off, and the protagonist takes a quick look, feeling a bit embarrassed. He thinks that all the heroines in the game are designed to attract attention. She is really beautiful, but suddenly Abel says that this is the best place to watch the stars. Jumar thinks, damn, she started a conversation. He wonders, is this really Abel, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor? He wonders why she started talking to a poor guy like him. Out of nowhere, she asks if his main weapon is a sword. He asks how she knows, and she says that her grandfather taught her this. A swordsman always has a very specific look. She offers him her sword and asks, do you want to try it? He says he's not really interested and wonders if she's okay. He wonders, is she really the same character? Then Abel asks, do you know who I am? Jumar thinks, she must be asking because she found me suspicious, right? He realizes that no one at this school doesn't know who she is. He says he knows her somewhat, and she replies that she doesn't know him. Jumar wonders, what's the point of this conversation? She says it's a bit cliché. He knows her, but she doesn't know him. Then Jamar asks, should I give my name to everyone I just met? She responds, you never know, right? You could be a demon king's spy, and I wouldn't know. You could be an infiltrator disguised as a student. What would explain you being here alone at night sitting on this bench? Jamar thinks for a moment and then asks, then why are you here? She says it's because she was training, obviously. He replies that he was training too. She asks, what kind of exercise? He says breathing. Then he notices the wounds on her hand. She gets a little embarrassed and hides them, but he tells her she's really diligent. She replies, of course, she has to be. No one knows the burden of being part of the Nepalung family. People from this family need to be perfect all the time. They can't show weakness at any moment. Then she asks, do you know that I'm not? The best student this year isn't her. This was the first time she lost to someone, but he knew that. However, when she said this, she didn't seem sad. She gave a little smile and said that it was a relief for her. But she was also curious to know who defeated her. She really wanted to know who it was so she could crush that person next time. Geomma, hearing this, almost vomited again and asked, do you really need to go that far? She replied that it was a matter of pride. She said she asked her grandfather, but he wouldn't tell her. She couldn't live as second place without knowing at least who first place was. Then she realized she was saying this to someone she didn't even know, and Jamar asked, then why are you telling me this? She said it was because he seemed weak. Don't show mercy to the strong, but be kind to the weak. That's the motto of her family. She also said that everyone in her class was really good, so she didn't have any friends. Jamar thought, so that's why the protagonist of the game hates her. Then she stretched and said she was going back to her room. She turned to leave but stopped and asked, so are you going to tell me your name or not? Jumar said he wasn't really interested. The next scene takes place the following day in class. Jumar thought that his school life had gotten a little calmer in the past few days. Chloe quickly made new friends in class, so he pretended to be busy and avoided looking directly at her. When Chloe's new friends found out that he was from special admission, they started teasing him, but he didn't care at all. Moreover, he wasn't the only special student in the class, and those people also avoided interacting with him too much. Now, thinking about it, being in a lower class was much better for him. This was exactly the point in the game's story where the Star and Dragon classes were forming alliances, or rather factions. Even though Jumar wasn't in either of those two classes, he felt lazy just thinking about it. He thought that, at least now, he was eating well. The principal gave him an unlimited card because he was the best student. This card was the college membership card. He hadn't been able to express his gratitude to the principal yet because he hadn't seen her since then. From that moment on, he started liking the principal a lot, thinking that he deserved it. After all, he was fulfilling all his duties as a student, and it wasn't really impacting the academy situation much. Now he just had to get through the next 3 years in the same way to get the future he wanted. In the next scene, during a lesson, the professor explains that 700 years ago, during the first war between humans and demons, the hero Joachim Belle, who felt the need to create heroes for future generations, founded an academy with his 7 disciples. The professor said that this topic would be on the exam, so it was better for them to familiarize themselves with it. Jumar thought that they knew this story somewhat. The hero and founder of the academy, Joachim Belle, fought against the demons for 20 years, battling the commander of the first demon army and the right hand of the demon king, Leek. He fought and emerged victorious in that battle. We then see a scene of 2 rays of light crossing, and it's said that in that battle, Joachim lost one of his arms and couldn't participate in the battle against the demon anymore. The entire place was filled with screams and blood because of the uncertain victory over the demons. After that, the humans and demons reached a truce in the middle of the First War, and the hero Joachim founded the academy to take care of future generations. The professor explained that this first war between humans and demons led to the establishment of a non-aggression treaty between the two sides, which resulted in 700 years of peace. The students were wondering if there would be a war in the 20th century, but no one was really concerned about that. Jumar thought about those 700 years of peace, but he was the only one who knew that the first crack in that peaceful treaty wasn't far away. It was natural that everyone was used to this serenity. In the next scene, we see him talking to Medea. He would really like to tell her what would happen, but he wasn't sure of the consequences. Even though she didn't hide the fact that she wanted to leave the school's administration as soon as possible, Jumar explained that she was the first to sense the abnormality because of her blessing, the poet's blessing. She was also the first of the 7 heroes who put herself at risk to protect the students. Jumar mentioned that he didn't play much of the game, but he had seen a spoiler of the story. She was the first heroine to be sacrificed by the Demon King, so he faced her death in the game. Now, in the present, he wondered if he should tell her or not. Back to the present, the professor says that's all for today and that they should study hard for the exam. Then we see a commotion happening in the front, with people gathering around, and Jumar wonders what's going on. Suddenly, he realizes what day it is. It's the day that person is coming to the class, Jumar thinks. If my memory isn't failing me, May 5th is the day he arrives, the main character of this world, Lon van Heinhart, and soon the 700 years of peace will come to an end. They're about to get crushed, and the protagonist thinks that the face of this bastard really is a curse. Why do all the girls fall in love with him? If this were an adult game, someone would have definitely killed Leon by now, but the protagonist keeps thinking positive thoughts. He thinks that even the main female characters in the game were made for Leon. Rachel Demira, the saint of the spear. Sacrioso, the daughter of the archery master. And of course Abel von Nebelong, the granddaughter of the Sword Emperor. All of them are part of the protagonist's group. It's kind of annoying, but Leon is the protagonist of this game, so everything is going to revolve around him from now on. The protagonist thinks that being near this guy in the same academy feels like involuntary enlistment, and this would be the second time he's been drafted, apparently. Geomma, the protagonist, thinks that even Joachim could only seal the first commander of hell. So just how strong is the Demon King? The protagonist isn't going to lose, right? That would be insane. Then suddenly, Leon glances at him and gives a little smile. He's caught off guard but says, it's fine, this is just a game. The protagonist will handle everything. It's not my problem, he thinks. Still, he admits that Leon's face is really convincing, almost inspiring. He almost got convinced to fight demons right there. Then, suddenly someone calls out to him. In the next scene, it's night at the training grounds, and we see the protagonist training with a longer sword. He realizes it worked. A very long sword doesn't activate his blessing because it's still too weak. At least he needs to learn the basics of swordsmanship, right? Then we get a flashback. The person calling him earlier was Chloe. She asks if she did something wrong to him. He really wants to say that she almost chopped his head off, but he doesn't want to bring that up now. He simply says that nothing happened. He's just busy. She's relieved. Meanwhile, Jumar is thinking, who is this girl? Even unconscious, her sword almost went straight through him. She seems to have a killer instinct. Her murderous aura is massive. He thinks she's definitely more dangerous than those thugs from earlier. Then she asks if he's doing anything that night and if he wants to have dinner together again. She says she really wants to take care of him. She means cook for him. She's not that good, but she wants to try, just for him. The protagonist thinks, dinner, huh? He remembers how she almost killed him last time, but her eyes were so cute, pleading and desperate for him to say yes. He thinks he might even feel bad if he turns her down, but he also thinks that if he accepts, he might wake up in a freezer the next morning. So he says, hey Chloe, instead of dinner, could you do me a favor? He says there's something only she can help him with. She thinks, only me? What could that be? He asks her to teach him swordsmanship. In the present, he thinks that he really needed a teacher for this anyway, and this is a great excuse. After all, Chloe is really powerful. He also remembers that the night before he watched a video called How to Survive a Yandere. Let's see if it works. She shows up all nicely dressed, asking if he had already arrived. The protagonist hadn't even noticed she was already there. She says she came at 6:30 and he says, wait, weren't we supposed to meet at 8? He starts looking at her and she gets a little shy, asking if she looks weird in those clothes. He says, no, of course not. But the protagonist is thinking about something he hadn't noticed before because of her uniform. She has a lot of muscle under that outfit. He thinks, she looks really cute today. Then he hands her a wooden sword. She asks, wait, we're not using real swords? Geomma thinks, what do you mean? She expected real swords for training. He says, we're just training, calm down, no need for real swords. She gets a bit flustered and then says, in a very awkward way, that he's really nice. The protagonist starts prepping himself with lessons from the yandere survival guide. When she swings the sword to test it, a huge gust of wind bursts out. The protagonist wonders just how strong she really is. Even Artemo seems weak compared to her. He thinks he's really weak, but at least his blessing didn't activate. He opens the system just to check again, and yep, the sword's length is still too much for his current skill level. His ability doesn't support that type of blade yet. Still, he analyzes it and wonders, are blessings always like this? Everyone else gains experience and levels up their blessing, but his seems to have additional effects. Is that normal? He thinks he'll have to figure it out later. Chloe looks a little worried seeing him so deep in thought. He apologizes. He thinks only he can see the system window, so he looks like a weirdo when he opens it and stares at nothing. He then politely asks Chloe to go easy on him because it's his first time training. She agrees, saying she'll take it slow. He asks if they can finally begin training, and he thinks, in his past life, everything Jamar learned came through practical experience. Seeing is believing. To truly master something, you can't just give a little of yourself. You have to be willing to sacrifice everything for it. That's the reason why Jamar adapted so well to the academy. It was because of that training. As Chloe gets ready, he thinks that this mindset has been with him since his youth. He notices that his palm is sweating, and his stance feels a bit awkward, but the final strike must always hit the opponent. Suddenly, Chloe charges at him without any warning. He thinks she came at him way too quickly. She almost hit his neck, but he manages to dodge with great difficulty. He remembers that she said she would go easy on him. When she changes her grip, the protagonist can barely lift his sword to defend himself, but he thinks he's finally got the right stance. However, Chloe has already jumped and is on top of him. He thinks she's still incredibly fast, but wonders why she backed off earlier. Their swords clash, but hers is so powerful that it cracks his training sword. She continues attacking him rapidly, again and again, and he thinks her strikes are incredibly heavy. He's almost at his limit trying to block everything. He needs an opening, an opportunity for a counterattack. But then his sword is simply split in two. Chloe seems to come back to her senses and apologizes. She tried to be as gentle as she could, but she still broke his sword. The protagonist remains still, and she wonders what's going on with him until she notices something and is shocked. Because the sword broke, meaning it became shorter, the blessing of the god of the sword activated. The system notifies that his sword has been damaged and that Jamar's level of humanity is decreasing. He activates the blessing of the god of the sword, and the system warns that what's happening is due to an error. The strength suppressor has ended up adjusting the target's personality, in this case, Jamar. Suddenly, we see a kind of simulation of his past life. He wonders, I'm back in the kitchen, and sees a fish on the cutting board waiting for him. He needs to choose what to cut it with. A cleaver? No, it's not appropriate. It triggers an error. A katana? Definitely not. He's not cutting a fish with a katana. He finds the perfect tool. A sashimi knife. He thinks it's weird, but okay, he'll cut the fish. He just needs to let everything flow as it should. We see him moving like a puppet, doing everything exactly as it should be done. Then the system notifies the protagonist's personality has been changed to evil. Chloe asks if he's okay, but he moves like a zombie until he suddenly charges at her with incredible speed. She manages to block, but the strike is so heavy that it knocks her back. The protagonist throws her across the field. She crashes into a wall, coughing up blood, and says that he's completely different from before. When he tries to stab her, she narrowly dodges. Jumar is completely out of control. Chloe realizes that just one hit from him has left her nearly unable to move. She wonders what happened to him. She doesn't know why he suddenly became like this, but the training needs to end. She pleads with him to stop, but she doesn't realize that he's no longer listening. He charges again. She thinks she won't be able to dodge this one and keeps calling out, begging him to come to his senses. Just as he's about to strike, she screams his name, and he returns to that simulation. He wonders, what's going on? Is the fish I'm trying to cut alive? The fish represents Chloe, who is shouting his name. He wonders, why is the fish yelling Jamar? Then he looks at the reflection in the knife and thinks, that's right, I am Kang Jamar. He questions where he is until he sees Chloe begging him to stop. The protagonist throws his sword aside before striking her. She realizes that he's finally regained his senses and says it's best to stop for today. She asks if he's okay. He simply thanks her for the training and walks away. In the next scene, a bit later, we see Chloe walking alone, wondering what happened back there. It was the same feeling she got when he killed those two brothers during the entrance ceremony. Those are Jumar's real capabilities. He's unusually powerful. She knows that what he used wasn't a technique, it was pure instinct. Even if he activated his blessing unconsciously, she couldn't even fight back. He simply overwhelmed her with half of a wooden sword. She thinks she knew she was strong, but not that strong. Then someone calls out to her saying she seems happy today. His name is Nox Auditory from the Auditory family, the same as hers. He's in the second year from the Tiger class. She recognizes him as her older brother. He asks if she entered the academy just to hang around with commoners, but she asks him not to speak that way about Jumar. So his name is Jamar, huh? Then he'll keep an eye on this Jamar guy, Nox says. But she simply turns around and replies that if everyone from the Auditory family were to come, no one would be able to kill Jamar. Nox is left wondering as she walks away, repeating to himself, Jamar, huh? In the next scene, inside Jamar's mind, he reflects that he needs to clarify a few things. The power given to him is far from a blessing. It feels more like a curse. He simply can't trust the blessing of the god of the sword. So he searched for new weapons. Even so, this power chased him down and took control of his body, as if the god of the sword thought all his efforts were a joke. He didn't feel pain during that moment. He felt pleasure, a corrupted, intoxicating pleasure. That blessing was toying with him like a puppet on strings, whispering sweet words in his ear. Cut, kill, destroy. He gave up control of his body, but Chloe's indistinct screams, screaming his name over and over, finally brought him back. Her voice made him recognize himself again as Jumar. With her shout, the fragmented world became whole once more. So he threw away that wooden sword, which felt as if it were fused to his flesh and bone, because instinctively he thought that was the best decision. The girl who tried to kill him moments ago, Chloe, was the same one who brought him back to consciousness. He was a little upset that the sword broke, but for once he truly felt gratitude. He left the training room quickly before the blessing could activate again. But will he really be able to control that blessing next time? This gift, which feels more like a curse, has already taken a part of his life as payment, a so-called gift that he will have to deal with for the rest of his life. He doesn't want this. He just wanted a normal life. He thought he could just take care of small problems as they came up, but now he realizes there is something inside him, something that consumes his sense and reason. It's not a blessing, it's a curse that wants to consume him entirely, a power that never should have been given. In the next scene, 3 days later, we see the wolf class. Chloe is talking to someone but seems downcast because she's wondering where Jumar is. She can't even contact him. She didn't get his number or anything. Why didn't she ask for it before? She even went to his dorm, knocked on the door, but he only responded with groans of pain. She was afraid he might hate her if she kept knocking, so she left. She likes to observe him from afar, especially when he's lost in thought, resting his chin in his hand. She doesn't even know how many times she secretly looked at him in a single day. She was always careful with her words around him so he wouldn't think she was annoying. At first, she was attracted to him because he risked his life for her, but maybe that was just an excuse to fall for him. Either way, she really misses him. The next morning is gloomy and overcast. We see the professor, clearly angry, yelling for everyone to shut up. He asks if they're all attending this prestigious school just to put on a performance. Since it's raining, they won't be training today and will stay indoors. Even the professor is worried about Jumar, who hasn't been showing up, but he thinks that, as his favorite student, Jumar must have a good reason for it. So like a good educator, he decides to wait patiently. Then, someone opens the door. The professor is furious, scolding whoever is late, but then he sees that it's Jamar. The professor is surprised. Jamar walks in with a lifeless gaze. He simply doesn't seem to have any spirit left in his eyes. Chloe stands up, concerned, asking if he's okay, but he simply apologizes to the professor for being late. The professor tells him it's fine and to just go sit in his place. The other students start whispering, wondering if he always had that kind of aura. For someone admitted under special conditions, he's incredibly intimidating. The room's atmosphere becomes tense and awkward. In the next scene, during lunch break, everyone is heading out to eat. Chloe approaches Jumar and asks if everything is okay, what happened to him, but he replies that it was nothing serious. She reminds him that he missed several days and she thought something might have happened. She asks if it was because of the duel they had. He says no, he was just a little sick, and thanks her for her concern. She blushes, feeling relieved, and says if that's all it was, she's really glad. But the protagonist thinks to himself that she didn't believe that excuse, and she's right. He explains that over the past 3 days he went through something like extreme withdrawal symptoms. He was mentally exhausted. He couldn't even leave his room to eat. All he could do was lie in bed and pray for the convulsions to stop. He suffered through pain even worse than what he had endured from using a broken weapon, much worse. But that wasn't the only thing that happened. When he looked in the mirror, he seemed mostly the same, but his face was sunken, and some strands of his hair had turned white. That was the punishment of a god. Chloe seems to feel guilty about all of this. Well, considering everything that happened, it kind of makes sense, but it's better for him to leave it behind. Then the protagonist says, "So, what about that dinner you invited me to last time? Is that still on?" She gets all flustered, asking if it's true he really wants to have dinner with her. He says yes, he wants to try her cooking. She gets really excited, starts jumping, and says of course, she'll do her best. The protagonist thinks she seems to really enjoy this. She says she'll make whatever he wants to eat today and asks what he would like. He says he'd like to have fish again, though last time he vomited everything. Besides, fish is really expensive in this place. Suddenly he feels something approaching. Both he and Chloe look up and see her brother Nox, radiating a murderous aura. The protagonist notices Chloe is completely shocked and asks her if she knows who that is. The two lock eyes and Jamar approaches him, saying that if Nox has something to say, he should just say it instead of staring. But Nox has a murderous look in his eyes. The protagonist thinks, what's with those eyes of his? Then Chloe steps in front of Jamar, telling him not to talk to that guy. She keeps asking why her brother even showed up. The protagonist notices her whole demeanor changes in her brother's presence. Her voice is trembling a bit. She seems scared of something. Nox asks Chloe if she really broke the family rule for this boy because he doesn't seem like much. She responds that whether she's from that family or not, she has nothing to do with them anymore. But he tells her there's no way to wash that blood off her hands. A Tori is always an additor. The protagonist starts wondering what kind of drama this is. What tragic story is unfolding right in front of him? It feels like she's a rebellious character from a Victorian novel, but Nox simply tells Chloe to stop being stupid and come back to the family. She suddenly yells very loudly, telling him not to talk like that about Jumar. The protagonist thinks she overdid it a bit. My God, maybe she could tone it down with the yelling? Then it suddenly hits him. Now diddery. He just remembered that. Specialized in infiltration and assassination, they're a shadow group that appears halfway through the game. From family to family, they are small in number but solely trained for assassination. Every member of the auditory is ridiculously strong because they are trained from childhood. They are killing machines. So if Chloe is an auditory, my God, what kind of situation has he gotten himself into? Suddenly, Nox's expression makes more sense. He has that cold, merciless assassin's look. It's not the expression of someone who hesitates to kill. The protagonist knows that auditories only kill to maintain order. They don't just kill for no reason. It has to be justified. Then he notices Chloe acting strange. She's biting her lips. He thinks maybe she wants a normal life too, but just like his blessing, she has a curse that stops her from living the life she wants. She was destined for this emotionless life as an assassin. He thinks it's really unfortunate for her. He tells himself, I'm not a hero, I can't save her, or can I? He wonders why he's even here, but he decides he'll take the first step. After all, he's a good person. A person who can't save one life, can't save the world. So he steps forward and tells Chloe not to worry. He'll talk to Nox. Can he really save the life of just one girl? He knows his blessing is a curse, but even so, he's not going to run from it anymore. He tried to escape his blessing, but it didn't work. In stories, they always say there's no paradise for those who keep running from their problems. And it's true, he can't run from his own problems. He'll walk toward them. He'll take the first step now. His name is Jamar, which means demonic sword. He simply tells Nox to follow him because now he's going to cut him down. But he thinks to himself, for someone with that name, I sure am using a kitchen knife. Meanwhile, in the teacher's room, the professor is wondering what happened to Jumar. His whole expression has changed. Then another teacher walks in and asks what's going on. He's thinking so hard it looks like he's going to go bald for good this time. He replies, "Please don't talk about my hair loss, okay?" Suddenly he receives an important call. Someone is informing him of something. The other teacher in the background is thinking he was already bald and just got that haircut, but it ended up looking kind of cute. The issue is that something is happening inside a subspace. The professor wonders who the hell requested a subspace out of nowhere, and they inform him that it was Geomar who requested it, his opponent, Nox Auditory. The professor is shocked by this. Then, before the fight begins in the subspace arena, Jamar is shown thinking 15 minutes before the battle. He thought this would be really complicated, but actually it turned out to be quite fast. Doing this just required being careful while doing it. He thinks he'll be fine since this isn't reality, it's a subspace, but he can still suffer mental damage. Still, he thinks it doesn't matter as long as he wins. He also thinks he can hear the audience waiting for the fight to begin. He didn't know the battle would be this exciting to watch. It's a bit ironic because Jumar never wanted to stand out, yet here he is. Now everything he did before feels meaningless. Meanwhile, Chloe is somewhere crying, saying, "Please, Jumar, don't do this." Jumar says, "Chloe, relax. It's all good," and he thinks she must be blaming herself for this. Jumar adds that she even lent him a knife. It's going to be fine, but then he goes silent for a moment and Chloe says that Nox is really powerful. Jumar replies that so is he, but Chloe insists that Nox is a genius with unmatched talent in the entire history of the Auditory family. When it comes to the art of darkness, no one is on his level. At 14, he was already considered a master. Jumar thinks, the peak of the art of darkness, who comes up with these names? But then he realizes it doesn't matter how much he tries to avoid this. This was the choice he made himself in the end. Just like his master once told him, he was destined to wield a blade for the rest of his life. Of course, his master probably didn't expect that he'd be using a sashimi knife in his reincarnation. Then, the narrator announces that the battle is about to begin, calling for the cadets to appear in the arena. Jumar says it's time. Chloe is a bit shy and clearly nervous, but Jumar calls out to her and says that the world is full of all kinds of geniuses. That's exactly why he is going to win. He walks toward the arena, drawn in by all the bright lights. As he enters, the crowd erupts in cheers. People shout that they believe in Jamar, saying they knew he wasn't a coward. Everyone is hyped for this duel. Jumar is clearly nervous. He feels like one of those Roman gladiators, like he's about to be devoured by a lion. But then he looks at the audience and realizes, wait a minute, the whole elite class is here too. These were the top students in the academy, and they were all there, including Belle, who was definitely watching him closely for better or worse. Jumar wonders if they don't have anything better to do. Now he's really embarrassed. Then Nox calls out to him, "You damn little peasant. Are you ready to deal with me now?" It's as if he doesn't see any difference between bravery and stupidity. How could someone walk into battle with a kitchen knife? Jumar truly feels Nox's murderous aura. This guy is no joke. But Jumar says a true master doesn't care about his equipment. Nox gets really pissed and says he's going to take care of this quickly, starting with cutting out Jumar's tongue. Jumar notices Nox's equipment and thinks he clearly puts a lot of faith in his gear too. It's just 2k katanas, nothing more, and he has one of the most powerful blessings in the game, the blessing of the crow. Jumar realizes Nox is holding back his killing intent and he knows how difficult that is to do. Nox is also using S-rank equipment, but the protagonist reminds himself he's prepared too. He's using a Sashimi knife of completely unknown rank. The subspace barrier begins to form, signaling the start of the fight. As it rises, the narrator wishes that the hero be blessed. The protagonist activates Resistenciador and the blessing of the sword god. He charges in with a murderous glare. The crowd starts noticing something strange about the battle. People assumed Nox would go easy on him, but both of them are moving incredibly fast, exchanging blows with their blades. A girl says, "Wow, they're really agile." And Belle starts thinking, that weakling Jamar fights like this. Even with his power of darkness, Nox can't seem to break through the block of the sashimi knife. Then Nox starts to mold a dark aura around himself, but even so, he notices several cuts on the ground and thinks, let's see if Jumar can dodge this one. He activates his ability, Three-Legged Crow, and splits into 3 shadow clones. These clones strike simultaneously and land hits directly on Jumar. Nox believes it's over. But suddenly, Geomar emerges completely unscathed, so fast that he avoided all the strikes. Nox asks aloud, how? The crowd is amazed. They don't see this kind of thing every day. People start saying this freshman really has something special. Belle thinks only those with truly sharp eyes can see what's actually going on. So far, the only aggressive attacks have come from Nox. Jumar has only blocked or dodged. She wonders, does he even want to fight? At this moment, Nox is trembling with rage. He remembers Chloe warned him that this guy wasn't normal, even after using the blessing of the crow which he thought would annihilate Jomar. The guy dodged it like it was nothing. Nox realizes Jomar is focusing entirely on speed. Seeing how skilled he is, Nox knows he has to be careful now. He decides to go for a single lethal strike, powerful enough to cut off his head, but he still can't believe Jomar is only holding a kitchen knife. Just then, Jumar drops the knife Chloe gave him, and Nox asks if he's already given up. But then Jumar picks up his famous knife, the one still stained with blood. He takes a stance for battle and starts staring into Nox's soul. Nox asks, "What is this? Are you trying to provoke me?" He prepares another attack with his dual katanas and says he'll slice Jomar in half with a single blow. But at that moment, Jomar simply vanishes. He's that fast. By the time Nox realizes it, it's already too late. Jomar thinks that all he ever wanted was a comfortable life, but somewhere along the way, he lost his sense of purpose. Still, he's not the type to regret his actions. He's going to make one clean cut, just that. A second later, Nox is already missing his right arm, unable to comprehend how it even happened. Jumar had passed through him like a shadow. Everyone in the audience is completely stunned, even the strongest ones. Jumar thinks it's time to use everything. Blessings, curses, whatever comes his way. It's time to say goodbye to the peaceful life he once dreamed of. In the next instant, he starts slicing up Nox's entire body, saving the head for last. The subspace barrier collapses because the battle is already over. The only one left standing is Jumar, while Nox is on his knees. Jumar calmly puts his knife away, leaving the girls around completely terrified by what they just witnessed. Jumar barely reacts. The narrator announces the end of the duel and thinks, I probably should have expected this kind of outcome from her. Well, there's no going back now. Jumar reflects on the fact that he did all this with a fish-cutting knife, but he still sliced a person. He can feel it. His only comfort is that everyone he's cut was inside the subspace. It was just a simulation. He didn't cut a real person. Still, he thinks about Nox, who had been left in despair. Erfol admits that Nox truly was powerful. Just as Chloe had said, he had incredible experience and battle instincts. However, anyone could sense his bloodlust. His killing intent was practically leaking out. In the end, that overwhelming aura worked against him. The battle lasted only 26 seconds, and the winner was Kang Gilmar. After that, the whole school went wild. Everyone was yelling, asking what had just happened. Geomar thinks, damn it, now I'm popular. He says, well, there's nothing I can do now. This was the path he chose, and he'll endure it with resilience and courage. And of course, after that, the school was flooded with rumors and gossip. People were saying that Nox was from the Auditory family, a natural-born assassin. How could someone like him lose to that guy, a freshman? Meanwhile, Belle was also thinking about Jamar. No matter where she went, people were talking about him. She thought, yesterday was really shocking. When Nox's arm was severed, she could hardly believe her eyes. In that moment, she saw swordsmanship like nothing she'd ever seen. Using only kitchen knives, the idea that someone could win a battle with that kind of blade was hard to process. Then she remembered something that time when she sat next to Jomar and wondered who had beaten her, who had taken first place while staying anonymous. She remembered thinking that Jomar seemed weak, so there was no way it was him. But then she realizes it was Jomar. He was the #1 student. She thinks, now I'm sure of it. How frustrating. She admits to herself that he really is stronger than her. She stands up and says, this is unacceptable. Her friend asks, what's going on? Belle replies, sorry Rachel, did I wake you up? Rachel says it's nothing, but then asks, are you sure it's nothing? Belle says she's just a little anxious because she hasn't trained much in the last few days. But Rachel looks at her and says, with that look on your face, you're clearly hiding something. Just say it, maybe you're hungry. Belle says no. Rachel suggests maybe she forgot her gear at home. Belle says no again. Then she says maybe she just needs to go to the bathroom. Again, Belle says no. Then, Rachel goes, it must be that boy. At that moment, Belle trembles and turns completely red. Rachel exclaims, no way, you're thinking about that boy, you've fallen for him. You're totally obsessed, you can't stop thinking about him. Rachel continues, who could this guy be that's taken up so much space in Belle's little heart? She starts listing options. Could it be Leon, the handsome blonde guy? He is really cute, after all. Belle says no. Rachel notices that when she mentioned Leon, Belle didn't seem interested, so maybe it's Jumar, that special student. When Belle trembles again, Rachel goes, bingo, got it. Then she grabs Belle and starts pulling her out of the room. Belle asks, where are we going? Rachel replies, what do you mean? Where we're going to his class? When they arrive at the tiger class, Rachel says, one moment, please. The students are shocked. What are they doing here? These were top-ranked students walking through like royalty. All that was missing was a red carpet rolled out in front of them. Rachel climbs onto a desk and shouts, where's the black-haired boy? Then she starts looking around, scanning the room to find him.